Hey, I've been releasing obscure Amiga games series for a little while now, and in the process we've all learned about some really fun and often virtually unknown titles. As a result of my recent poll on this very channel and Patreon, it became clear that you guys wanted similar series for DOS. And I'm happy to deliver, as believe it or not, but DOS may have as many if not more games than Amiga that never saw the limelight and were worth much more attention than they ever got. I'll keep the series in a similar 10 games per episode format so that they could be shorted palette cleaners, if you will, between long-form releases of my usual gaming history videos. So, not to waste any more of your time, let's get on with it. Spycraft the Great Game is just that. A great, underrated and often overlooked game. Basically speaking, it's an adventure title depicting attempted assassination of the President of the United States and CIA and KGB's attempts to save him. While it's not endorsed by either of the organizations, the game focuses a lot on realism and even features former directors of both agencies playing themselves. So CIA's William Colby and KGB's Major General Oleg Kalugin. You're Thorn, a rookie CIA agent, and you learn that Russian presidential candidate has been assassinated by a rogue former CIA agent codenamed Harmonica. You'll quickly realize that American president is at Harmonica's crosshair too, and henceforth you'll travel the world meeting many people and gathering clues to prevent the killing and stop potential future international conflict. While Spycraft is largely linear in its narrative design, following the FMV storyline and occasionally offering you puzzles and challenges to solve, nearing the end it will branch out a little, providing two alternate endings. Most FMV games were garbage, and yeah, you heard it here first. They either used FMV as a graphical gimmick to lure players in to purchase often dull or badly designed titles, offering so-called next-gen visuals and no substance. But there were also those that stick out that were better and offered something more, a genuinely good story, interesting mechanic or puzzles. Under a Killing Moon and Phantasmagoria are great examples of the latter. And Spycraft, believe it or not, is really good too. So if you're into FMV adventures, this one's as good as they come. It features interesting and believable story, pretty decent acting and fun puzzles. Give it a go. Blackthorne is a side-view action platformer very similar to Flashback, but focused more on fun and bloody combat rather than puzzling. Story-wise, after 20 years on Earth, you have to come back to your home planet Tool to save it from evil villain Sarlacc's clutches. Armed with just a shotgun, you're a one-man army on a mission to do just that. Soon enough, you'll come across other weapons and items that can come handy in this quest one way or another. So, you'll be fighting off hordes of evil aliens, saving hostages and solving simple puzzles. I really like the cover mechanic where you and enemies as well really can hide in the background layer to avoid getting shot. It introduces a lot of tactics to otherwise simple shooting gameplay, and makes it feel deeper than your typical run and gunners are. The game's rather gory, so I obviously loved it back in the day, but the fact that it runs really well, looks great and plays awesome adds a lot to the fun factor. It never reached heights of popularity of Prince of Persia or Flashback, even though it should, as for me at least, it was always more engaging title than they were. If you've never had a chance to experience it, this one's a no-brainer and a lot of fun that should have been much more popular than it was. Track it down, load it up and get lost in hours of cool alien blasting. Tongue of the Fatman, aka Fatman, aka Mondus Fight Palace, aka Slaughter Sport, is a game with more titles than it deserved. One was enough really. Anyway, it's a late 80s versus fighting game with a gimmick. Said gimmick being the fact that you choose not between the specific named characters, but between their races. So there's humanoids, cyber droids, cryoplasts, amazoids, biohuskers, razors, mammoths, Pathians, celluloids, and lastly, colonoids. Origin of the name of that last race is not something that I'd ever want to learn, even though you can read those in-game. I'd rather let your imagination wander, or more likely, let your imagination forget about the name altogether. Each of the races have their own unique 15 basic moves and one special, and all play a little different. You start with only 3 to choose from, but as you progress through the game defeating certain races, they will be unlocked to be picked for the future encounters. The final boss is the titular Fatman named Mondu, whose special ability is so-called tongue lash, where his belly opens up and sprawls a tongue twig that jabs the enemy. So you. Despite him being the last character you play against in a single player, he's not as hard as some of the earlier ones can be. So yeah, that's 80s game design at its finest. But wait, that's not all. There are 24 different items in the game and they can be purchased between matches for money earned fighting or for wagering the fights, and up to 4 of these can be taken into the ring. Each of them is a singular use only, but they can easily make or break the game. Tongue of the Fatman features 3 bars for each player, one for health, one for crowd favor, and most important one, the red, for those noobs who try to complete fighting games with just one move. In short, if you try to spam the same technique, it will decrease it and at some point the attack will do just a tiny fraction of original damage. So you have to mix them up and not only rely on 1 or 2 moves. You can lose 3 times, it will cost you $100 to revive, but after 3rd that's it and you're down forever. Tongue of the Fatman is easily one of the weirdest versus fighting games I've ever seen, and definitely a title fans of the genre should play at least once. Lexi-Cross was probably one of, if not the most unusually designed game of 1991 when it released, and also among titles in this very video. For all intents and purposes, it's a futuristic TV game show, with gameplay elements borrowed from Scrabble, Wheel of Fortune and Battleship. Saying that the gameplay itself is odd is an understatement, but it's interesting, and when you get used to it, it's actually quite entertaining. Each player or player and CPU has a grid of hidden tiles that conceal various words. They take turns revealing said tiles in attempt to uncover letters or bonuses. Alternatively, players may spin the wheel to guess a letter. Whoever manages to form a complete sentence first wins. The gameplay idea may sound bizarre, but after a round or two becomes clear, and playing against a friend is really fun, provided that they enjoy word games, that is. Oh, and there's over 600 puzzles in Lexi-Cross, so you'll not get bored with it fast. Mines of Titan is an early turn-based tactical role-playing game by then widely unknown Westwood Associates, that still had few more years to go before they would become a household name with their Command & Conquer series. Mines of Titan is an enhanced remake of an earlier 664 game, Mars Saga. It's longer, features some new storylines, creatures, and its locations are moved from Mars to Titan. Duh. Cities and maps layout look identical, however. It takes place in the year 2261, when humans have long been colonizing the inner solar system and are about to finish terraforming Titan, Saturn's largest moon. You're Tom Jetland, as opposed to Tom Jet Takeoff, and due to an unforeseen event you crash land on Titan. With no means of transport and no money, you must find a way to get off this god-forsaken rock. So to raise funds, you must search for and recruit characters for your party to explore and survive in the unforgiving world of Titan. You train and develop your character and his companions by upgrading over 20 different skills, which all come in handy in both side and main missions. Quests themselves revolve around mysteries of Titan, uncovering vast conspiracies and telling the fate of disappeared Prosecinium colony. Other than that, you'll obviously need to raise enough credits to pay for a safe passage of Titan. Many of the enemies you'll encounter have special abilities, so the combat is quite tactical, with you planning your attacks and how to respond to enemies if they can't be counteracted beforehand at all. Interestingly enough, Mines of Titan is one of the few early role-playing games that gave you a complete freedom of choice when it comes to who to attack. You can go for the innocent and poor if you like, as much as you can aim high and try your luck with the police, because they drop one of the most powerful armors in the game, so it may end up being worth the risk. Mines of Titan is an interesting if overlooked game that should have gotten at least a bit more attention than it did. There is more unusual about ZZT than there's usual about it. That sentence did not make much sense, but it correctly describes how I feel about the game, as it's not going to be an easy one to explain. ZZT is an action-adventure puzzle game, but it's also seemingly unlimited object-oriented programming and scripting-based game creation system, all rolled into one, and all in simple color ASCII graphics. You control a smiley face in different grid-based levels where you have to solve puzzles and battle various creatures in one of 4 worlds filled with single-screen stages to the brim. You'll interact with objects like bombs, scrolls, ammo, torches and keys among others to solve all levels and reach the end of the game. ZZT is viewed from a top-down perspective and objects can be interacted with by either touch or by shooting at them. Game worlds are made up of levels/borders that connect with each other, and you can move between them by either reaching the edge that allows for passing or by teleports. The game starts in a hub with 6 exits. 4 lead to one of 4 worlds, and the other 2 respectively quote-unquote museum-type world displaying all the items, terrain and creatures included in the game, and second showing previews of all 4 worlds. The main goal, as mentioned earlier, is to reach the end board and complete the game by finding purple keys to open locked doors or gathering objects throughout the world. But on the way you'll be solving both puzzle boards, where clinical thinking is a must for progress, and they usually require untangling combinations of boulders, sliders and pushers, or mazes with invisible walls and teleports. Some of them, when botched, can impede your progress, becoming unsolvable, so make sure to save often. And there are also action boards, where you face off against lions, tigers and bears among others. These require not much more than reflexes. The included editing tools allow for unparalleled freedom of creativity and expression and were so popular that there's currently over 3,000 whole worlds created and archived online, all made within ZZT. And while the 3,000 may seem like a lot when talking about those worlds, overall, the game was largely unknown. Interestingly enough, ZZT was originally programmed and released as a shareware title by Tim Sweeney. And if the name rings the bell, he's the one responsible for Epic Mega Games, then Unreal Engine, Fortnite and eventually Epic Launcher. So he knew what he was doing, it seems. Traffic Department 2192 takes place in the year, well, you guessed it, 2192, and it's a top-down multi-directional shooter. It was originally released as a shareware title with only one of 3 episodes available, and all 3 were unlocked upon purchase. Each of them consists of 20 missions. Shareware games were very popular in the 90s as they allowed developers to properly present the game to potential buyers, giving them a taste of what's in the full product, and promoting the game in the same time as they were free. Lack of publisher for smaller dev teams often limited their availability though, and that's why these were often overlooked and many were forgotten before getting a chance to shine. Anyway, you're Lieutenant Marta Luis Velazquez, a young pilot working for the traffic department in the metropolis of Woodhaven on the planet Siege. The vile gang known as the Vultures is slowly taking over the planet, and the traffic department is the hand of the law and the last line of defense. And since you're fueled by painful memories of vultures killing your father when you were just a kid, your disposition towards the gang is rather aggressive and you spare no efforts hunting them down. While the game is technically just a shooter, it features a complex intertwined science fiction story of cloning, mind control and cybernetics, all sprinkled with a touch of betrayal, bit of infiltration and a dash of warfare. Traffic Department 2192 is composed of 60 missions, before and after which lengthy cutscenes are featured, spanning over numerous screens each. The story of the game is supposedly well over 50,000 words, which is something many adventure and role-playing games of the time didn't have. It's worth mentioning that while Traffic Department is definitely a game for adults being chock full of profanity and sexually suggestive language, all of the mature content can be disabled at start. It's a truly unique game worth both your attention and time, if you're at least a bit interested in either a genre or games with deep and engaging storylines. Charlie the Duck is a horizontally scrolling 2D platformer clearly inspired by Super Mario games, in which, as you might have already noticed, you control a duck named Charlie. So, as in most similar titles, majority of the time you go from left to right collecting coins, diamonds and other items, usually found in crates that can be destroyed by jumping on them as opposed to from below, like in Mario games. You'll face various dangerous cute-looking creatures and generally will have the time of your life platforming your way to completion. Yep, I just heard that and let me explain. I obviously meant games completion and no other kind. Really, there's no profanities here. Charlie the Duck not only looks great, but plays as good if not better than Nintendo's original, even if it feels a bit more demanding. It's full of hidden passages and secret areas accessible through pools of water, because you're a duck, remember? And overall it screams quality in nearly everything that it offers. There's been many different games that try to imitate Mario's success, some more, other less plagiarizing the classic, but Charlie, while clearly based on the famous plumber, stands on its own and offers a lot of fun content without risking a lawsuit. And while generally speaking Charlie is impressive, it's not perfect and there's few things that could be improved. For one, the game features separate controls for fast and slow movement, which on a keyboard is more than annoying and requires some serious keystroke gymnastics and should be redesigned. But hold that thought, as we'll circle back to it in a bit. Sounds are sparse and there's virtually no music, which could also be expanded upon to offer more immersive, more climatic gameplay. And last but not least, the game's hard. Not Mario hard, harder, at least to me. Especially in the latter levels, so keep that in mind if you're looking for something more on easy and light side. Today, in 2023, Charlie the Duck is best played not under DOS but through Steam, as it was re-released and little redesigned to finally offer a singular movement pace. There's also more sounds and music added, offering a more rounded up and complete package. That said, if you wanna try it out the way it was originally released, DOS version is good too, just not as good. The Horde is a mixture of strategy and action and a bit of tower defense added for good measure. With no tower though. You're Chansey, a lowly servant boy who has become a knight after saving King's life from asphyxiation, which is quite funnily acted out in the game's introduction. Gameplay is divided into 2 phases. In first phase, you always lay traps, extend your village, build houses and farms, all within very restrictive time limit. In second, monsters attack, and you have to run around defending your settlement. And it can become quite hectic at times, with enemies charging from couple of sides, and you having to manage your time defending both flanks and disposing of the invaders. The Horde is quite ingenious, balancing the arcadish fighting with strategic planning and expansion of both your village and its defenses, while in the same time making sure that all the taxes to the king are paid in time. The Horde was criminally overlooked by majority of gamers when it came out, so if you knew of it and ignored it, shame on you. Shame on you, as it's a true gem and a title worth not only revisiting but also completing, as there aren't many like it even today. Now, imagine this. Adolf Hitler died in his childhood and World War II never happened. Instead, not much later than it would have taken place, aliens invaded Earth. and suddenly both options seem equally as dramatic, and I honestly don't know which would be the worst scenario. But I'm leaning towards Adolf being the bigger body cause he was a human who committed terrible crimes against his kin, humanity. And aliens perhaps just didn't know any better. Anyway, the reality of Corncob 3D is alternate to ours. Let's set that as a background constant. And you're the lone pilot who must help push the aliens back and keep the Earth safe. You do it in the only World War II plane that exists in this alternate reality, a 4U Corsair named Corncob. The game takes place in a variety of different locations, and while it's not grounded in realism as you fight against aliens, its simulation aspects and flight model have been largely praised by the small few who played it upon release. Funny enough, despite aliens being able to invade the Earth seemingly thousands of light years away from their homeworld, all they have to use against us are projectile weapons, not unlike our own. One would think that they would have lasers, plasma weaponry, or even something more advanced, like diarrhea-inducing lasers or freezing rays. Something, but to no avail it seems. The game features 3 full-length campaigns of 6 to 7 missions each, and most can be finished in between 5 to 20 minutes. While missions mainly focus on destruction of something, they are pretty varied from one another. So you'll destroy power plants, teleportation gates, and in one will even have to fly your plane into objective installation, kamikaze style, jumping out of your craft in the last moment not to die. It's one of those games that was so different than anything else that whomever got to play it remembers it even today. And this is where we hit the proverbial nail. Corncob 3D originally released as a shareware title, and henceforth it never gained enough widespread and recognition to be appreciated by more than just a few people who experienced it. It's also probably the only combat flight simulation I've ever encountered that allows for jumping out of plane and parachuting to safety just to carry on with your mission objective on foot. If you like simulations and enjoy games that virtually close to no one experienced, it's definitely one to see. Toasty! So, how do you find this first episode of Obscure DOS Games? Were the titles in it something you knew of, or are they entirely new to you? Sure, a couple of them you might have seen in my former DOS gaming history videos, but the fact that I spoke about them as particularly good games there doesn't make them not little known. So that's why they're here too. Anyway, one way or another, let me know in the comments below. If you like playing DOS games in the 80s and 90s, hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Over 70% of you are still not subscribed, and if you do, every new video will always pop up in your subscription box to let you know that it's there. If you believe DOS era was most epic for games, share and comment below. I try to reply to all civilized comments I get, so it's not unusual to find me there talking to you guys in long threads. If you feel like supporting me through Patreon or YouTube memberships, I'm gonna be forever grateful, as it helps me release better content and may in time allow me to replace my editing PC that's on its last legs already. If you can't or don't want to do that, likes and subscribes are great too. Most of all, however, I would like to take a second here and thank all of the YouTube Let's Play and Playthrough creators, from whose videos short bits were taken for this one as a video background to my commentary. They're amazing, and thanks to their efforts, retro community can prevail for years longer and in better form than it could have otherwise. So thank you. For me though, this is all, so have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Peace.